Hello, everyone, book clubbers. It's me, Megan, your fearless book club host, and I'm here with Torrin Kearns. Welcome, Torrin.
Hey, it's Kearns, like Earns.
Kearns, thank you.
Yeah, I get that a lot though, Kearns. I get because that's how it's spelled, but it's Kearns.
Awesome, thank you. I always butcher people's names. It's like the worst thing
Me
ever.
too. I can't even remember names. I'm awful with that.
Same. I apologize in advance to all of you all. I'm only at like 60% of brain capacity because I got COVID last week, and so I'm getting better now. So I apologize in advance if I'm not on my game as much as I should, as much as I usually am. So can we talk about your experiences growing up?
Born and raised in New York City, Manhattan, like a neighborhood called Washington Heights, which is like just above Harlem, like by the Bronx. I moved around a lot. I didn't move around uh place to live, but I moved around schools a lot. I think I went to probably a dozen different schools. So
Really?
yeah, because I was always trying to find. I've been in some form of special ed from the time I was 3 years old to the time I graduated high school, and it was always hard finding like a school to work for me because especially I'm 28, so back during like the early 2000s, special ed wasn't what it was. The Board of Education in New York is a shit show. It's called Department of Ed now. It's still a shit show. So yeah, so I didn't go. I think the longest I've ever been at one school was 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was 10th to 12th grade. That was the longest I've ever been in one school.
So you grew up in New York, and how old were you when you were diagnosed?
8.
You were 8, and you were living with both of your parents?
No, so at the time my parents were divorced. I had like split custody. I think at that time went back. I think I was living mostly with my dad at that time.
Mm.
So I know my dad's the one that got me diagnosed.
And how did that go? Like, were your parents accepting of that, or like how did that go
Uh, my
as a young?
my mom wasn't really into all that psychology stuff. She didn't really accept it at all. She just thought I was kind of weird. Thought I needed more discipline. She blamed my dad. They didn't get along well. My dad was more accepting of it, but he went like OD the other direction, where he bought every book we could about it that was in existence, which wasn't much. It was mostly written by people I refer to as the alphabet people. So those are like doctors that they have their name and they have a whole can of alphabet soup after their name, like PhD, like SC, WTF. So
WTF?
and all, and all of those books basically can be summed up as your kid's fucked up and they're probably not going to live a normal life. Sucks to be you. That's basically. I read some of those books. So and that literally they all said basically the same thing.
And
So my
that's what your
dad
dad
basically
was reading at the time.
yeah. So my dad sort of internalized that, and he's like, okay, this kid's never going to do. I can't expect much from him. So my expectations were held pretty low. Um, he didn't. He like yeah. There wasn't much expected of him.
From with your dad. Your dad was basically reading all of the books with the alphabet people. T likes that, the alphabet people. I know. I think that when I write a book, I'm gonna put WTF after my name. Megan Ashburn, BAWTF. I think I like that idea.
You should.
But Torrin told me to do it. So I know that you were talking about when we talked earlier. You were talking about how was it your mom or your dad was medicating you?
Oh, my dad. So I'm trying to think of like there's so many like different interesting stories that sort of intersect. I'm trying to think of how to summarize it. Um and like what angle to take it from. So my dad was a pill popper and a drug addict and had a bunch of mental issues of his own. So his solution to dealing with me was just to act psychiatrist to med me up to the gills. So I was on antidepressants when I was 8. I was on antipsychotics when I was 11, like adult doses too. I've been on probably 15 different drugs between the ages of 8 and 19 when I stopped taking them. Because my dad was a pill popper. He took everything. He used tranquilizers if he got too stressed out, and yeah, so yeah,
So like
opioids and things like that.
self-medicating.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of self-medicating. If I had a meltdown, what he would do is he managed to get himself like a big stockpile of the antipsychotic I was on for a short time called Seroquel, which is what they give to people with like schizophrenia. And he got like a stockpile of this stuff. And this stuff lasts forever. So we kept it. And if I had a meltdown, it's because it's fast acting. If I had a meltdown, he forced me to take one. That would shut me up.
And did the doctors tell him to do that?
Of course not. But of course not. This guy's a pill popper. Of course he's not asking the doctor. The doctor didn't tell him to do this. It's like he medicated himself with Clonopin. Of course he's going to medicate me. So that was one thing. It did stop the meltdowns because that stuff it's basically like chemical lobotomy. You'll be like,
I bet it stopped pretty much everything.
Yeah, it did. Like
it's not funny. I mean, obviously it's not funny, but
it's like a piece of your brain is missing. Like it feels like it's like there's a part of you that's like there's a part of your brain that isn't turning on, and because you can almost feel the like black space, the blank space, but you can't get it to turn on. That's what it's like being on those drugs.
It's like trying to turn on a light switch when there's like a hole.
Exactly.
You can't connect, yeah.
Or it's like a TV that has a black spot on it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not fun.
Wow. And so how long did that go on? Like, was this about childhood or
about 11 years? Because even after by the time I was in high school, he wasn't forcing me to take because he couldn't. I was bigger and stronger than him by that point. But what he would do is I was still on like mood stabilizers, and I didn't like them for all the reasons I mentioned. But he would because he had heart problems, among a bunch of other stuff. And he would tell me if I didn't take the mood stabilizers, I would wig out because that stuff is addictive. And I never learned how to regulate my own emotions because I'd been drugged up since I was 8 years old. So if I missed a dose or I didn't want to take it, I would start wigging out. And what he would tell me is that the stress of that would give him a heart attack, which would kill him. So if I didn't take the medication, I'd be responsible for killing him. So he'd guilt me into it. When I went away to college, I stopped taking it. And that was rough. Withdrawing from that whole I almost got kicked out of college because I was just wigging out every like 15 minutes for 2 months until I figured out how to regulate my own emotions.
Yeah, because you didn't have any practice growing up. Because basically,
exactly.
if you felt dysregulated, you have a meltdown, you'd be tranquilized.
No, exactly. And the only reason I was able to go off is I went away to college, so my dad couldn't stop me. I told him I was coming off, and he freaked out. There wasn't anything he could do by that point. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that was hard, especially when you're in that age, going off to college. You really don't have any support at that point.
Oh yeah, that was, and he did not like me going away to college. He got very upset at me for wanting to. When I told him I wanted to go away, because I went upstate, so I live in New York City, and I went to a college like 400 miles upstate, 500 miles upstate, near like where Buffalo is, and that. Not by there, but like up around there, on one of the Great Lakes. And I told him I wanted to go away to college. He flipped out. It's like, you really think it's like you said you're not going to make it 2 weeks up there. You're going to have a meltdown, and then we're going to have to come get you. Or my aunt was going to have to come get me. My dad was disabled. Which didn't happen, obviously. I spent 4 years up there, but yeah. Like I said, this is heavily condensed. That's why I'm stopping and starting, because I'm taking a very long story and condensing it down as short as I can. My dad was an interesting character. He had a lot of issues. He suffered from clinical depression, anxiety, a bunch of other undiagnosed mental disorders. So, and he sort of reflected that on me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said, what a survivor, for sure.
Thank you. He cared about me, but he was also like almost overprotective. Because my mom died when I was 11. And that's a whole different story. My mom was pretty abusive too. But my mom died when I was 11. I'm the only child. So he had that like single parent protectiveness, but he was like almost overprotective. Because he also thought like, couldn't function. So he's like, I can't, like, he yelled at me, like, for even thinking about going to college. Even though I had the grades and stuff, I went to, and the funny thing is, he was, I don't mean to go on a long story, but he was
No,
disabled.
it's fine. We're sitting here like hanging on every word.
He was disabled. So by the time I was senior in high school, he was almost bedridden. So I was actually taking care of him while in high school. And he was whacked out on methadone half the time, and the other half he'd run out of methadone and be whacked out from withdrawal. So I was taking care of him. I was cooking for him and things like that. And when I wanted to go to school, we had like a home health aide, but we had trouble. They wouldn't stay because he was also crazy. So he'd scream at them when I was in high school, say we quit, understandably, because he was also incredibly abusive. And so I would take care of him during the times they were trying to find some unfortunate sap to deal with him. And I would take care of him when I wasn't in school. And I was the one who had to fill out all my paperwork for school. I had to go to like these conferences and stuff. I had to fill out FOXFA and things like that. That's you have teenagers, so get ready for that one.
Oh, I know.
Right?
I know.
Yeah, get ready for that. It's fun.
And so basically, you had to do that kind of stuff by yourself.
I had to remember Social Security numbers because he had his own paperwork. He couldn't fill it out because he was whacked out most of the time, so I had to do it for him. Yet he was telling me I wouldn't be self-sufficient enough to go away to college. Meanwhile, I'm the only one running anything around because he was just existing by that point. He was in bad shape. So
T had a comment here. I feel that more meltdowns in adulthood because I didn't learn to regulate as a child. I mean, I can kind of see, like, that type of parent that kind of like you're not allowed to have those meltdowns, and you're not allowed to show those emotions. So you kind of, well, in your case, they tranquilized you, but or sedated you, but in other cases. I mean, I know a lot of parents who are like, no, you're not even allowed to have those emotions, so you just kind of have to suck it up. And then
exactly,
when you become an adult, it's like, how do you even? You have to learn that stuff, and it's hard.
And the funny thing is, my dad had an anger issue, so he would wig out. So funny story, and we'll probably circle back to this story because it does have something to do with autism. So I was interviewing for a school. It was like the 5th interview because I was out of school for like a year and a half. I couldn't find a school where I fell behind everything. So I graduated a year late, and we were at the school that was supposed to specialize in autism. And so he's at the interview, right? My dad and my aunt's with me, and my dad just starts screaming because it's early, he doesn't have coffee. So he starts screaming, he's like I need some. So suddenly he's quiet, and he goes, I need some coffee. And we're like, we're waiting to go talk to the doctor. Can you wait? He's like, I need coffee. And we're both like, can you wait? And then he's like, I need coffee. And he starts standing up with it's actually kind of funny. He stands up with his arms out and starts yelling to the receptionist, does anybody in here know where I can get a fucking cup of coffee? And the receptionist's like scared shitless. She's like, sir, I think there's a truck at the corner. Thank you. And he storms out and he comes back 10 minutes later with a cup of coffee, all docile. He's like, this is good coffee. Now, me and my aunt are used to him doing this because he always did this. So that he would do this, and then I'd start screaming, and then he would turn to doctors and be like, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, if you read my old IEPs, a few years ago, I read one of my own IEPs when I was like 13, and it literally said, we don't know what issues Torrin has that's connected to autism, and what issues that he has are connected to his father.
Connected to trauma, yeah.
He started screaming at doctors during one of my IEP interviews once. So they're like, we don't even know if he's autistic. He might just be messed up because his father's insane. So that was another issue. I got the diagnosis, and then doctors after that every doctor after that disputed the diagnosis for various reasons. That this is off topic, but that same doctor at the interview my dad had the breakdown. This guy's supposed to spent his whole life working on autistic kids, right? So he asks you just basic questions like, what do you like to do for fun? Yeah, small talk for like 5 minutes. And suddenly bangs his fist on the table and turns to my aunt and goes, Torrin doesn't have autism. And we're like, what? It's like, Torrin doesn't have autism. I'm sitting right here. He's talking about me in third person. Torrin doesn't have autism because he just held a conversation with me. And if he had autism, he wouldn't have been able to hold a conversation.
And this is the doctor saying this.
Yes, the guy that runs the school for autistic children. And this wasn't too long ago. I would have been like 15, so this would have been 2007, 8 in that ballpark. So this wasn't a million years ago.
I know we were gonna go into functioning labels, weren't we?
Yeah, sorry about that. I made it go off.
No, we can segue into that right now. I mean, that is kind of segues into our discussions on the functioning labels and like the doctors with preconceived notions. I mean, what did your dad say when this doctor said that?
Oh, my dad wasn't in the room because after he had that little tantrum in the waiting room, we were afraid to have him talk to the doctor because we didn't want him to curse him out. Because he'd done that before. So he just cursed out doctors and people like that. So he basically stayed in the waiting room, and my aunt brought me. And my aunt's rational and isn't crazy. So she had to be the intermediary because they didn't trust my dad not to curse to do that. So for any number of reasons.
Honestly, at that point, I'm sorry. Excuse me. At that point, I don't know. I think I might have had the same reaction if the doctor had said that about my kid. We've had the same experiences actually with one of my kids being misdiagnosed because he was like too interactive to be autistic, and he gave eye contact, and so there was like zero chances of him being autistic. And this was like 4 years ago. I mean, this was before I knew anything about autism. So I'm like listening to the doctor like, oh, okay. So, what is going on? So he was misdiagnosed with a severe I don't know what the word is, severe cognitive delay or something like, I don't forget, something like that, because there was no way he could be autistic because he gave eye contact. So I feel like at that point, your dad might have been within his rights. We don't cuss the doctors out, but to be angry, to get a little flustered.
No, I wouldn't. If he would have gotten mad that instance, I wouldn't have blamed him. My aunt, you could tell, my aunt is so calm and understanding, and you could tell she was barely keeping herself together. And that's not her. She's like the opposite of my dad. She's his sister. And she's the opposite of my dad, where she is very calm generally, and someone will throw bullshit at her and she'll be able to stay calm. My dad would just scream at you.
Yeah, your dad. So you were talking about your mom at one point with me, and I want to circle back to your mom because you were telling me at one point, this is like in the beginning of the internet, right? So your mom was in the chat rooms.
No, that was my dad.
Oh, it was your dad?
My mom didn't think autism existed. Like, he was just like, the kid's just weird. Just like beat his ass a couple more times, he'll stop acting like that.
Right.
It's like he doesn't act like that with me. Yeah, because she beat my ass if I acted like that.
Right. And so it was your dad who was in the chat rooms.
Yeah, because like my mom, my mom was, grown men were scared of her. To give you an idea, like it was like grown ass men would be scared of her. Like she was just one of those people that like was just a very imposing figure. So I acted less quote unquote autistic around her because I didn't want to get my ass beat or get yelled at. So, and she had, I feel bad. She had her own set of issues too. That like, my parents met in a psychiatric clinic as inpatients. No bullshit. Like legit, they met. So the doctors were trying to find legal reasons why they couldn't get married, and I know that's true because they saw the same doctor for like 30 years. So like 10 years ago, I asked that doctor who they've been seeing before I was born, like, so is it true that you tried to find reasons why they shouldn't get married? She's like, yeah, we were trying to. No offense, your parents were crazy. We didn't want them getting married. We knew any kid thing. It's like you're lucky you turned out the way you did. We knew any kid they had would just been screwed.
So how do you
it's
feel
true.
like? Oh, go ahead, Torrin. Sorry.
No, I'm saying so. It's a true. That's a true story. I asked the person who was there trying to keep them from getting married. She's like, "Yeah, I tried to keep them from getting married, but we couldn't find any legal reasons why."
So how do you feel like being Black tied into your experiences growing up?
Easy, because it's rough, because in the Black community, we're suspect of anything that's different. So, for example, I get a lot of times people say, you look like a cop, right? Which I don't really notice, but like my friends would be like, you look like a cop. I get that all my entire life. They'd be like, you're not. I'd be like, yo, you're not a cop, right? Because, yeah, if I was a cop, I would straight up if I was an undercover cop, I would straight up fucking tell you that I'm an undercover cop. Like, no, I'm not a cop. Like, at work, like, I would have this happen, like, at work. It's like, are you a cop? It's like, why the hell would I be working here if I'm a cop? I worked in youth development, and one of my coworkers was like, are you a cop? Yeah, because I'd be undercover working with kids. That's what I'd be doing if I was an undercover. Like, so you get that a lot.
Why do you think that is?
We're suspect of anything that's different, and undercover cops, they usually take undercover cops. In the NYPD is not good at running undercover operations, so they take people who are not comfortable being in the hood, so they look mad conspicuous. Like they'll be like looking around, their hands in their pockets, like dead ass not fitting in,
like out of place.
Yeah, out of place. Like you could tell, like they get made all the time. So that's the reason I get labeled as that. And some of my friends do as well. So it's not just me, but because I'm different, I don't speak the vernacular quite as much as a lot of people from the hood do. I don't speak properly. I've already dropped like 5 F-bombs, but like you can just tell I sound a little different, which actually annoys me the most, because then people assume in New York City, most biracial kids, like black and white mixes, since most white people in New York City have money, they assume you grew up in the middle class. So that actually pisses me off, because then they're like, so I'll get a lot of black people will look at me like I'm some middle class dude, and I'm not. Like, I grew up in the projects. I'm living the projects right now. They sold crack on my corner. Like, I was raised by a single parent. I'm not bougie. So things like that. That doesn't protect me from the cops, by the way. That doesn't protect me at all. They just see a black person when the NYPD comes rolling through.
Right.
They see a black person. That biracial card don't work with them unless you pass. It doesn't work with them.
It's basically the double-edged sword almost sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not black enough, and then of course I'm not white enough either, because the white people they can smell, like they can, forgive my language, they can smell the hood nigga on me. Like they can almost sense it. They don't say it, but they can sense it. There are parts of New York City I walk through, I get dirty looks. Like, so it's part of it. It guarantees that I never really fit in anywhere, because the autism, socially, I've always been a little bit awkward. So I don't really get accepted by the black community. I spent most of my time in special ed, so I didn't go to school in public school with the rest of my community. Most of my friends coming out of high school, a few friends I had, most of them were like white, just because I just made friends with people who went to my school. Most of them were white. So it's something where I wasn't even fully like racially conscious until college. In college, when I went to college, there were more black people, and because we were upstate, which is like hillbilly country, like upstate New York, so the minorities, we wild out. Like we let people know that like we weren't them. Like we, for whatever reason, we felt the need to really wild out when we were in hillbilly country, and they hated it. Like we felt it. So
to let them feel your presence.
Exactly. No, that's a good phrase for it. So that's definitely a way where there's been some intersection between that. Most people in the black community, the idea of mental health, unfortunately, is still a bit behind. We don't take people to see therapists. We don't believe in the idea of like mental disorders, unless you're just like stone cold crazy. Not my words. That's
the words that right. You're saying basically that's the words that you're hearing is crazy.
Exactly.
It's
my
not.
Mom was from the projects too, so My mom was black. She was from the projects. So, like, all the parents that I mentioned, my dad was in the chat room, all of them white, and all of them, like, middle class. So there's also a classism aspect to it, too. It's almost like you actually have to have a certain amount of money to have the luxury to be disabled.
Say that again.
You have to have a certain amount of money to have the luxury to be disabled.
Mm.
And in places
I had
like
to
New
take a
York
pause on that one. I had to take a brief pause on that. You summed it up nicely right
Thanks.
there. You summed it up nicely.
And in places like New York City, the economic lines mirror the racial lines, unfortunately. So there aren't really any poor white people. There are very few. If you have money, odds are you're white. In New York City, that's where a lot of the like Black Lives Matter and white privilege stuff, it comes from people who associate whiteness with money, because that's growing up where we're growing up. When I went upstate, I didn't know like there were poor white people. Like, I heard stories, but I'd never seen them. Upstate, everybody's poor. And they couldn't, when I told them there weren't poor white people in New York City, they didn't believe me. Because they're like, we're all poor. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, it's different in the country.
It's different. It's different. The town I went to college in, the only thing going for that town was the college.
Yeah.
That was the town itself was in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
The whole region was in bad shape.
Mm-hmm. I know my husband would always say, like, we're from rural Virginia, like super rural. And he would always say, like, where we're from, there is white and there's black, but then there's country, and there's poor country, and that's everybody. So it's like, yeah.
That's a lot how it is upstate New York. When people think of New York, they think of New York City, because that's where half the state's population is. Yeah. But like upstate, it's like a lot of trees, there's a lot of farm country, what we call townies, which are like people who are in these small rural towns. There's just nothing. Just rundown townhouses and poverty and meth, shitloads of meth.
Yeah.
And heroin.
Well, I mean, you got to think about it. Like, your parents, you grew up in the projects, your parents had mental health issues. Probably not a whole lot of education, I'm guessing.
No. Both of them were high school dropouts, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, just like you said, the luxury of being disabled is not there for you, really. I mean, it was just, your dad was in these chat rooms with all these white upper class or middle class moms, and they were probably using all of these, fancy words for your dad, saying, well, he's just crazy. He's crazy. We just have to.
Well, the problem is the chat room people, they would encourage it because they all had the same beliefs he did, where they believed the books too. So it would be like an echo chamber. They would say, listen, we understand. Don't expect your kid to do anything. Don't expect them, because they all read the same book. So it'd be this echo chamber. And this was back like during AOL Online. And they would just be echoing each other's bullshit, which of course made it worse.
So it's even validating to,
Yeah. And then doctors are, The luxury still isn't there, in all honesty. No, it's not. No, it's gotten worse. No, it's actually gotten worse.
It's not there.
Because I don't mean to get political, but this comes into play. As wealth inequality gets worse, and it's getting worse, even before the pandemic, it really got bad. Things like social services, things like education become harder and harder to achieve. More and more people end up in debt. There are fewer and fewer decent jobs. So the stuff that affects mainstream society affects us too. In fact, in some ways, it affects us harder.
At an exponential effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want to say that, just because I don't want to devalidate anybody else's struggle, because like we're all struggling right now. The whole country is struggling. So I don't want to say like my struggle is worse than anybody else's. There's definitely some unique aspects to ableism, because ableism is real, and there's some unique aspects that makes it different than other forms of bigotry. and things that are similar.
You're not even coming across like that, Torrin. Don't even think you're coming across like that. I mean, it is a fact. I mean, it's the intersections when you have disability, and then you add on top of that, you have poverty, you have race, you have education. I mean, all of those things they just pile on top and on top and on top, and it does make those inequities even greater.
No, it does. And so a common example is jobs, especially in New York City right now, there are basically no jobs except retail. And retail, they treat you like crap. Your hours are bounced around. Aww.
Give me that.
Your hours are bounced around. Your bosses are dicks because their bosses are dicks. You're expendable. They'll fire you making the slightest mistake. There is not a whole lot of direction. You're expected to be very proactive in your job. Things that a lot of autistic people and neurodivergent people struggle with. Like, a lot of us need schedules. In retail, you get no schedule. You have a schedule for a week, next week they flip. And those are the only jobs right now because everything else got wiped out. Right. And it was already heading in that direction before the pandemic anyway. For example, 94% of new jobs created since 2005 are either temp, gig, or contract, meaning they're not permanent. They're on a temporary basis. So things like financial security are becoming harder and harder for everybody, and that makes it even harder for autistics because we struggle to navigate mainstream society sometimes in general. So if mainstream society is basically fucked to begin with, it's really bad for us. You get what I mean?
I do. And then there's extra barriers to even getting those jobs in the first place when you're talking about the interview.
Oh, you tell me you're autistic, you're not getting hired. You're not getting hired. I've tried it. I've had multiple friends. You put that you're autistic on an application, you're not getting the job. You say that in the interview, you're not getting the job. You got to lie about that. Because they don't want to deal with you because they're afraid that, like, if you mess up and they fire you, they'll get sued. So they just won't hire you.
Yeah, and I mean, and then there's like the interview process. It in itself is stressful enough and has its own barriers.
For a lot of us, yeah. I've been lucky that I'm really good with interviews because I love talking about myself because I'm a narcissist. But a lot of people, I have friends that they struggle with interviews. And they can be very nerve-wracking, and especially if you haven't done it a lot. Like, most interviews are sort of the same, especially if you haven't done a lot, but it can be very nerve-wracking, and you're trying to present yourself in the best light, and you're trying to you have 5,000 different mental processes going on at the same time. You're trying to make eye contact. You're trying to not make too much eye contact to make sure you're not talking too loud, make sure you're not rambling, yada, yada, yada. It's a lot.
It is a lot. All right, let's talk about your book, Torrin.
Cool.
Tell me about your upcoming book. I want to know all about it because I'm not familiar enough with that genre to even ask good questions.
It's going to be it's sci-fi fantasy. Aww.
Okay, go ahead. Hi. Okay, sci-fi fantasy.
Sci-fi fantasy where it's going to be part of a series. So first, it's a collaboration between me and my best friend from high school. He's an illustrator, and he used to do all these drawings of like futuristic ships and robots and skeletons and stuff. So, and he had this whole like role-playing world called Tenebrae Space, and we started working together to build a story about Tenebrae Space. And essentially, the series we're working on, the first book I'm currently working on now, is about the sort of how Tenebrae Space is essentially at the beginning stages of like a long decline. Tenebrae Space is this sort of intergalactic federation, confederacy, whatever, sort of a loose conglomerate, and centered on the planet of Tenebris. And right now, it's starting its decline due to a whole host of reasons. So it focuses on a planet at the very edge of Tenebrae Space called Earth, which is sort of like their version of the Boonies.
Gotcha.
And there's a young man who's known as a cognition, which is a type of psychic who he sees these golden cracks that will just spontaneously superimpose themselves on reality, and they're very frightening. And sometimes you'll see like these almost like monster demon like creatures. He also has like mild like precognition abilities as well. And he's essentially kidnapped by the sect of fanatical cultists. And in doing so, he's sort of forced to confront some of the things happening in his past, which he can't remember, and also learn exactly what lies between these golden cracks he's always seen. So that's the long pitch for the series.
It sounds amazing. It sounds so creative. I don't think I could come up with any of that kind of stuff.
I did I kept the story, but a lot of like the races in the world and sort of the basic concept are my friend Henry, who's working on it with me. But one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to make it very neurodiverse positive. So there's a lot of neurodiverse characters in it. It's not straight up said what their disorders are, but it's obvious what some of the struggles they have. And I also just wanted to tell a story of people who are marginalized for various reasons and the societies who are marginalizing them. And what happens when enough people become marginalized. And that's essentially the general theme behind the Tenenbrain Chronicles. It's the name of the series.
That's awesome. That sounds awesome.
Thanks.
So what stage are you at in
right now I'm working on the second draft. I finished the first draft during the quarantine. I was working on it for like 7 years on and off, trying to figure out like how the hell am I going to write this thing. And I finished it during the quarantine, so that was like one small positive. And now I'm working on the second draft. I'm also working on some like short stories that are sort of tie-ins because it's a whole universe, and as well as I'm getting myself into freelance writing and possibly freelance editing. I don't know yet.
Oh yeah, I saw that you were starting some developmental editing. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm still like 50-50 on that. I should know by now because I've been waffling back and forth. I should know, but I tend to be indecisive sometimes. It's a matter of I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put my time commitments because the book takes up a lot of my time. So we're planning to self-publish, and that means that takes a lot. We gotta basically do all the stuff like the editing and the covers and stuff. Luckily, my friends.
I was gonna ask you about that. So you are gonna self-publish?
Yes, because it's tough with mainstream publishing. You get screwed over a lot, and neurodiverse led stories don't sell, so you're unlikely to get published. On top of that, Black authors tend to get really screwed over. I mean, like they found instances of. I mean, like we make like 70% less. Like we really like the racism is so blatant in the publishing industry, so
it does not shock me one bit. I'm sorry to say.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. Yeah. So that's our plan. We're planning to do self-publishing, and my friend Henry's doing all the art, and we're trying to build this whole like interactive world because obviously you can't cover a intergalactic confederacy and everything involved in it because each of the planets have their own story, their own politics, and their own sort of characters and stuff. So we want to make it sort of this interactive world that other people can get in on and create their characters in and sort of help make the world, make the universe real. And we're hoping to have that up and running by the end of the year.
That's awesome. I'm excited about that. You'll have to send me one of the first copies.
Definitely.
Giveaway. And we'll do a giveaway in the book club. We'll have a big to do about it. Oh yeah, that's right. Bobby said Jessica Kingsley Publishers does publish indie authors. A lot of the books on the book list is through.
Hold on a second. Let me put that in my phone because thank you for that. I'll put it in the phone later. Jessica Kingsley. Thanks for that because I've been looking for places that do because that's the problem. It's they publish stories about ND people, but thanks. They publish stories about ND people, but it's always from the perspective of the neurotypical and sort of their story. Stories like the movie just came out from Sia Music. Those are the ones that tend to sell. You heard about that, right?
Which one? Say it again.
So the singer Sia, the woman did like Chandelier and that song. She produced a movie called Music.
I've
And your
heard
comments
of
are
it.
going to
I've
blow
heard
up.
there's controversy about
Your
that.
comments are probably going to blow up in the next 5 seconds.
Oh.
Over that, because basically it's some ableist garbage. It's about a recovering drug addict who finds herself in custody of a nonverbal autistic after her guardians die, and it's bad because told through the perspective of the caregiver, and they show some really disturbing things, including one scene where they use a prone restraint, which is like illegal in half of the United States. Prone restraint is when if an
I'm
autistic
sorry. I'm sorry. Where did you see prone restraint being used?
In the movie. There's a scene where the autistic character's having a meltdown and one of her caregiver restrains her. And then the line, so a prone restraint.
I know what it is.
Yeah. If anyone here doesn't know, it's you put the person face down and then you put their weight on them to keep them flailing around. And he does this and he says, and the main character's like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm crushing her with my love. How this guy, I'm wondering how the hell no one looked at this and said, she must just surround herself with yes men, see ya? Because I'm surprised no one looked at her and went, this is kind of fucked up, especially after the George Floyd thing. This is building her with love. Yeah, that's the quote. I want to see the movie, see how bad it is, but I need to pirate it because I'm not going to give that woman my money. That's what's killing exactly. So you think after it killed George Floyd, you think someone would go, we might not want to put this in the freaking movie. I told you your comments would blow up.
Jesus, I have I don't even know who Sia is. So I see things about that, and
yeah,
I just don't. I don't keep up with pop anything. So it's like I have no idea who the people are. So I haven't even followed it. Jeez.
And she worked with Autism Speaks. That's who funded the movie. They're like the primary funders of Autism Speaks. That's why it's so bad.
No,
I'm laughing. It's terrible.
Torrin, how do you come up here? Look, you come into this book club, right? And you just say things that you just can't make up. Like this entire interview has just been you talking about things that are just so bad you cannot make this stuff up.
I went to college for nonfiction creative writing. I only got into fantasy and sci-fi because of my friend. That's the reason I went to school. That's the reason. That's what my original major was in college, because I just had a bunch of shit happen to me and heard a bunch of stuff that you can't make up.
No, you can't make this stuff up. God.
No. But yeah, so Autism Speaks funded this movie.
I'm looking at all the comments and I'm like, Sia spoke to non-speakers to get their opinion. Why even bother?
Allegedly, too, and then the autistic character is a neurotypical. I forgot to mention that part. She just used her friend, who she uses for a lot of her music videos, Maggie Ziegler. It's not she didn't use an autistic character for the part, which isn't a surprise. At least to me, that was a surprise.
It's not a surprise, and I'm almost. Not happy.
She got mad.
But gosh, I wouldn't want her to use an autistic character and then put them in a. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you're right about that. A lot of the books, the majority of books and movies and everything are featuring and written by neurotypical authors and characters. Centered around. Yeah. You're so right about that. But definitely check out Jessica Kingsley Publishers. I know that there's a lot of books that are published with them that have neurodivergent authors, and I haven't seen many of them in your genre, so it might be something that they're looking for.
Definitely, I'm glad she mentioned that, 'cause that's something I definitely will look at. Because I know I don't want to do mainstream publishing because they're terrible, and they lost money during the pandemic, even though book sales were up. How is that? How is that bad at managing that? Like you lose money during the pandemic where everybody's at home reading books.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I want to have like neurodivergent led stories that aren't about the neurodivergent people learning how to just act more heteronormative. Like, because that's the other thing. It's like it'll be about the autistic character learning to act more heteronormative, and I hate that.
Yeah.
Like I hate that sort of conforming thing. So, and those themes show up. Like there's like the themes of like ableism and racism and all that stuff. They show up. They're going to show up in the series, definitely. I try to basically I use a lot of historical references and things like that, and I try to basically make a fantasy story out of actual real things, and really tell a story that. And like I said, this isn't like I wanted to do something that was fantasy that wasn't medieval based, just because almost everyone does medieval. I wanted something that focused like on like poor people and people living in small towns, people living in small rundown rural towns, and people living in the projects, and
that aren't royalty. Yeah,
that aren't royalty, exactly. So those are all stuff that I really want to sort of put into the series to really tell the story, but also to have a message, not a ham-fisted message like Disney likes to do, but an actual message along with a story.
Like different things you can kind of take out of it. It sounds like.
No, exactly. Yeah. And then it's me and my friend, so it's two people working on it. So it's not just me. So there's a lot to offer. There's stuff we're finding that we're trying not to let modern day like contemporary news affect the story.
Yeah.
But it's hard because like I've been working on it for years, on and off. So I would write things that happen in the story that would be like completely over the top versions of what would happen here, and then it would happen here.
And isn't that it's like you were writing like fantasy things that you thought could happen out of things that have already happened, and then they actually happen.
For example, there's a scene. This isn't much of a spoiler because it's a throwaway thing, but there's a scene where one of the characters on Earth is a military dictatorship in this world. And it's essentially split between the talented kids are put into a military academy, and everyone else is put into what they call government school. And government school is basically just a government-funded school. But because all the money goes towards the military, like for example, they basically take out like a tablet and they just fill out a multiple choice test and leave because they fired all the teachers so they can buy another warship. And this character's school is literally inside the subway station, inside a subway tunnel. So like the classroom will vibrate as the trains come speeding by on the other side of the wall. Because I thought that was really over the top. Because who the hell would do that? And there's a public school in the Bronx that's built like over a subway tunnel. Like the subway runs through the foundation of the school, the Metro North, which runs 24 hours a day and just runs through the foundation of the school. So the whole school just vibrates. I'm just like, oh my God. So things like that, where I'm trying to be over the top, but then America will catch up to me.
Right. America. Yeah.
Freedom.
2020 made your fantasy novel just nonfiction.
Yeah, basically, yeah, it made nonfiction. There's another major
fiction. Right.
Another major plot point. I won't spoil because it's a major plot point, but like I had it in there for a while, and then it happened. Almost exactly like how I wrote it. And I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, me and my friend Hammer are just like, oh my shit.
Nostradamus. Torrin Stradamus. That's what we'll call you.
I'm scared though, because Aeon, that's the name of the universe. Aeon goes into some dark places. So I'm getting worried here.
We're gonna be all right, Torrin. We're gonna be all right. I have faith in your creative expression that I'm sure we're not going to actually get to that point.
Apparently, I'm writing stuff into reality, so I need to write like When anyone says America, I get homesick. I'm writing stuff into reality, evidently. So I think I just need to write I need to write that like everybody gets health care and $1,000 a month, and hopefully it will happen.
Yes, do that, please. Oh,
If that happens, you know who to thank.
This has been a fun meeting.
It has been, yeah.
Okay, hey, I have to ask you this question before I forget, and I forgot to email it to you. But you watched enough of the videos since like we talked, I think.
Yeah.
And you know I have to ask a question to all of my guests. So you can take a minute. You can take like 30 seconds to think.
Yeah.
Since I didn't give it to you ahead of time, my bad. If you could give one piece of advice to the parents of a newly diagnosed autistic kid,
I already know what I want to say.
what would it be?
Challenge your kid. Don't assume they can't do something because of their diagnosis. That doesn't mean throw them into the deep end until they're miserable, but make sure your kid is challenged a little bit, always. Because the thing about us is, most people in general seek comfort. But I feel like, I'm speaking in general terms, but with a lot of autistics, we really seek comfort more than most because the world is really overstimulating, uncomfortable to begin with. So what you have to do is you have to make it that you're always pushing us out of our safe space a little bit. Otherwise, we won't progress. And that's a big thing because it's going to parents, like I'm telling you right now, there's going to be tantrums, there's going to be meltdowns. They're not going to like it, but it's really going to help. And I want to stress that that doesn't mean, if, for example, the sensitive to light, that doesn't mean like you put their head in a lamp and make them like look into the light. That just means make them challenge them a little bit so they can grow, because they will need to grow because this world is harsh and they need to be able to advocate and they need to be able to find skills to help them navigate the world. Because yes, we're trying to change society. That's what we're working on. But that doesn't happen overnight. We need to find a way that we can navigate this world while still staying true to ourselves and who we are, without having to basically just change ourselves to the point where we're just masking the entire time.
I love that answer. It's and T said it so well, as she was adding on to yours, that balance. So don't throw them into the deep end, but don't infantilize either.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that, because I think we were talking about that on Saturday with the 26 letters workshop or whatever we did, the live, and it was basically presume competence, right? No matter what those people with the letters behind their name, the alphabet people say, presume competence no matter what. Like they can, your kid can do, and I love that. I
like that. Presume, exactly. Presume competence. And even if they can't do it in quote unquote normal way, yes, there needs to be some. I guess is a second piece of advice. You need to find what works for the child, what works for them. How do they learn? How do they communicate? Because there is a way they learn, there is a way they communicate. We all learn, we all communicate. So you need to find a way that works for them.
Accommodate, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna give you all the alphabet soup letters. I mean, all the alphabet soup words. Accommodate, yeah. Make those accommodations. Yeah, I love that. Oh, what did Bobby just say? Yeah, it is a great, yes, feel free, steal away. I'm sure I stole it from somebody myself, but the answers are always different. Everybody has a different answer, so it's always fun to hear. But that's a great answer.
I like those questions because they do have different answers. That's mine. That's always something I came up with fast. That's always something I think about, because I always would because I'm relatively articulate. All my life since high school, I get parents saying, "You're so articulate. How what's your secret?" Because they want their kid to be like me.
Yeah.
And the first thing I have to say is, first of all, I don't know how to shut the hell up. Like, this is a double-edged sword. Second of all, They're not me though. I learned I'm just naturally a talkative person. That's just who I am. That's just who I am. The question is, as how can they, to take a cliche term, how can they live their best life?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's being able to run my mouth and to talk to people. I really like doing that. I love talking about myself, not in like a narcissistic way, but telling my story because I have seen a lot of weird stuff, and I think I have something to add because growing up poor and growing up with like drug addicts and stuff like that, I think I can add a little bit to the greater narrative.
Absolutely. Your own perspective, your unique perspective.
Yes, because everyone's perspective is unique. And I don't mean to ramble, but that's one thing I can't stand about how we're also portrayed in media is you see shows like Atypical where the autism is held in a vacuum, where characters will live in like a nuclear family in like a suburban where they can sort of push every other challenge to the side and just focus on the autism, and that's not the real world.
For sure. And not every autistic person is the same as that atypical person or whatever. Exactly. I don't watch a whole lot of TV.
That's another show where they use
I haven't watched that. I've never seen it. I need to start watching some of these shows.
No, you don't. The show sucks. No, you don't.
Okay. I haven't seen any of them.
Everything's going to be all right. I heard it's pretty good.
T says, because most of the problems we have with masking are just unnecessary things. You don't have to make eye contact. You don't have to speak. You don't have to be exactly like other people. There were only a few changes I needed to make to elevate the mask. That's what helped everything else. You know, it's funny T said that. I have been consciously paying attention to how much eye contact I give on a daily basis because I've always thought it was weird that that's like a thing. Like I never even thought about eye contact before, like my kids were autistic. And then I learned like that's a thing. And so, you know, I hear it all the time now, like people talking about, you know, you don't have to give eye contact or whatever. But like when I'm with people, I rarely give eye contact. Rarely. And I've noticed it. Nobody has ever said to me, look at me in my eyeballs.
I know, like no one ever is like, no one ever
does that.
A conversation like this. Like no one does that. What they mean, it's not a good term. What they mean is, like for example, when I was younger, I would talk to you, but I'd be faced like this.
And like exaggerated.
They want you to look in your general direction because that's how we can tell someone's paying attention to what we're saying.
I get that now. That makes sense, Torrin.
I wish they would say that. I wish they just, because that's what they mean. They say make eye contact, look me in the eye. What they mean is, are you paying attention to what I'm saying?
Look in my general direction. Because I've even seen posts like on Facebook and like on autism inclusivity and things like that, where it's like, you know, should I look at people in the eye like in the beginning and then at the end and like twice in the middle? And I'm thinking like,
I have to consciously think about that stuff. Like when
it's exhausting.
Like when I'm in an interview, I have to constantly think. Hell, I've thought about it right here because I'm not used to seeing myself on camera. So I'm trying not to look at myself. Whenever I look at myself, it throws my train of thought off because it's like talking into a mirror.
It's weird.
But then I'm automatically, because I've trained myself to think about whenever I'm trying not to sound like a complete jackass, I've trained myself to look at people for a certain amount of time. What most people do is you look into their eyes and you sort of dart off. You look to their eyes, and I have little tricks. Like, for example, I don't want to look at somebody. I'll say something and look like I'm thinking like I am right now because I'm not looking at you. I'm looking off to the side because that's socially acceptable. If you're thinking about something, to not look at somebody. So I'll purposely slow down when I'm saying, even if I know what I want to say, just so don't have to look at them because then it's socially acceptable. Little things like that you just pick up. I'm very perceptive, so I've picked it up over the years, just watching people. That's how I learned how to do it. I learned how to do it by just. This the reason the doctors didn't believe I was autistic because I just would watch people and how they talked, and how they reacted, how their body language was, and copied it. And they couldn't. They didn't believe that because they said there was no way I would understand social cues enough to be able to do that. Which makes no sense because I didn't understand them. That's why I'm doing it. Like if I understood the freaking social cues, I wouldn't do that.
Right. Kieran, hey Kieran. The mask is about projecting acceptability, what's acceptable to others, but what is deemed acceptable to others is not always how they act themselves.
Oh yeah, definitely. What I never understood is a lot of neurotypicals and people in general present the same like negative qualities that they attribute to us. To which I have a theory that the things they say about autistics, we're sociopathic, we don't feel empathy, we don't understand nuance, we're very set in our ways. I feel like that's just traits that society generally looks down upon. So they just map them onto a group of divergent people. Because have you ever been on Twitter? Like, have you ever been in? Have you ever been in like a political thread, like a political comment thread? You
I
see all
try
that.
to refrain. I try to refrain.
Yeah, you see all that stuff. You see some of the most sociopathic, lack of empathizing nuance. What the hell is nuance? I haven't seen nuance in any sort of mainstream discussion in 15 years.
Oh.
But they're saying we can't do that? It rings a little hollow.
Yeah. Somebody said hypocrisy. I can't find it, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's the definition. I don't even think they notice they're doing it. They just do
it. It's baffling to me. And then I mean it's just the like thinking that you're always thinking about that kind of thing is draining to me.
Like, see, you were thinking about what to say, so you looked up the sky.
Yeah, I always
little things like that. Well, that's socially acceptable because you were thinking about what to say. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, that's okay. Yeah. Bobby is all. I don't. They are draining. I cannot do them.
Where what did the other one say? Bobby said?
I'm all over the political chats.
Oh yeah. It's terrible. It's terrible and soul draining. And I can't. It's like addicting though. I can't help myself. I'm so political. Like I'm really toning the politics down for this. Like
I can actually sense you toning the politics down, and I appreciate you for that. I cannot do them. I just cannot do them. I can't. Like, just on Saturday, if you look at the comments in that 26 letter thing, there's like bickering back and forth, and and I was I started to say cut it out, but then I didn't because I wasn't feeling good enough, so I wasn't sure if my head was on right. But I was like, "Jeez, I can't. I just cannot even."
No, I get that though. Anybody who's listened to me up to that point, it's kind of obvious, like what my political opinions are. like there are certain keywords that you can just tell. And I've dropped some of those keywords. You can kind of tell. I'm not on the right. Like, I'm not a Trump supporter. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. Look, hold on. Sorry, let me see what she said.
Oh my God, yes. Jesus. Yeah. Yes, that's so.
It's just awkward. I mean, who sits there looking at people's face all the time?
I do. I have to. I have to. So I can't help but go defend. It's exactly what Bobby said. Bigotry just in general pisses me off. Which we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, that's like I have to stare into people's faces, especially during like interviews and stuff like that, because I have trouble reading body language. So I go a lot on facial expressions, and I also don't hear very well. So vocal inflections sometimes, half deaf vocal inflections sometimes are lost on me. So I rely a lot on facial expressions to tell like how the conversation's going. So there are times where I have to like be staring at somebody without looking like I'm staring. So I have to constantly be like I'm looking and then look off. I'm looking. It's a whole process that I've had to train myself how to do, and it's draining at times.
It sounds draining. It does.
Yeah, it's. I think that's what people refer to as masking. I think I'm not familiar. I didn't learn about that term until like 3 months ago.
Yeah, Kieran talks a lot about that masking, and so does T talks. Well, it seems like everybody's talking a lot about it, which I'm super thankful
for. Because And it's a real thing because we have to do it. It's particularly tougher for female autistics because females in general, as you know, have to mask. And then you have to mask on top of that. Like, I'm a dude, so in my opinion, it's not quite as bad for me because men in our society are allowed to get away with more. I can be more eccentric. I can curse. I can say things. I can be a bit inappropriate. It's socially acceptable for me to do that.
Right.
Women have to operate a lot tighter, so it's definitely it can be rough for them.
Yeah.
For me, I barely have to mask. I don't put myself in situations where I have to. And as a dude, that's a type of privilege. If you talk about privilege, that's a type of privilege. As a dude, I have that privilege where I can take myself out of most situations where I have to actually like pretend like I'm not autistic. It's very rare when I have to do that. At least in like social interactions. That and except in front of the police. Like, I gotta make sure I don't have a breakdown in front of the police.
Yeah, I was gonna say, except for when, yeah.
Yeah, because then they might fear for their lives.
Well, Torrin, I have really enjoyed this conversation. This has been amazing. And I have enjoyed the comments as well. The conversation in the comments has been amazing.
I like it though, because it really makes it like almost like a round table almost. I like that.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Oh, Karen has a new published paper on it.
I'll check that out.
That looks really fancy. Liebert Pub. That sounds
can that link be posted in the group?
Yeah, it'll be in a comment in the group. These
okay, cool. Yeah, I can go click on it. Cool, because that's a lot to remember.
Yep. But yeah, so thank you for joining me, and I hope that you'll join me again, especially when your book starts getting ready to publish.
Oh, no problem. Definitely, I'll be like, hey, can I get back on your live chat?
And I would say absolutely, because it would be awesome. And yeah, we'll have to do a giveaway in here too.
Definitely. And I just want to say thank you so much for not just for giving me a voice, but allowing us to have a platform, because so few neurotypicals, I hate to bunch people in groups, but so few neurotypicals give us the opportunity to actually speak for ourselves or communicate for ourselves. They always just talk over us, like big time. Like I finally understand why the moderators get so mad about that, because they'll just straight talk over you like you're not there. So thanks for giving us that opportunity, and for the Facebook group, because unfortunately there aren't a lot of opportunities for us to speak to neurotypicals. Most of what we have is just speaking to each other, which is great, but there's a lot of preaching to the choir. We know.
I mean, honestly, I appreciate it just as much as you do, because we, parents, educators, you're giving us a chance to learn from you, and especially especially educators and even parents, they don't have a whole lot of time to, find the resources. So that they're in here and you just come on and just offer it. It's really nice. It's a blessing. So thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you everybody. If you haven't noticed, I have become more organized this year for 2021. So most of our book club meetings will be on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. And we have almost every Thursday booked up until April already. And I'm already booking into April. So we have like some phenomenal guests coming on, and I don't have the lineup here, but if you go to the event section, I don't even know who's next week. I honestly don't even, my brain is not working, but we have some amazing guests, just like Torrin, coming on. So yeah, definitely mark your calendars for those, because they're going to be epic. So yeah, thank you all. And Torrin, you hang on. I'm going to end the broadcast and then you hang on.
No problem.
Studio again. Bye everyone.
See ya.